Tonight, confusion over reports of Court of Appeal judgment affirming Lamidi Apapa as national chairman of the Labour Party. APC fails to inaugurate new National Working Committee members as Kogi APC dissociates itself from names purportedly ratified as replacement for national and zonal officers. Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Terry Ikumi. Now, the inauguration of new National Working Committee members of the All Progressives Congress, which was scheduled for today, did not hold. No reasons were given, but it may not be unconnected to the position of the APC's Kogi State chapter, which says that the National Working Committee of the All Progressives Congress replaced the former Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the party, as well as the former Zonal Organizing Secretary, who both resigned from the party, with names that did not emanate from the state chapter of the party, which is a clear contravention of the party's constitution. Now, according to a statement signed by Honorable Abdullahi Bello, Kogi State APC chairman, the Kogi State All Progressives Congress, under the leadership of the Governor, His Excellency Alhaji Yahya Bello, met to ratify and forward names of replacements for the national and zonal officers that left the party. The state chapter says it ratified Honorable Yahya Ade Ismail as the new Deputy National Publicity Secretary and Honorable Isiaka Musa as the Zonal Organizing Secretary for North Central. And in line with the provisions of the Constitution, according to the statement, it was communicated to the National Working Committee through the North Central Zonal Chairman of the party. The Kogi APC wants the National Working Committee of the party to reverse the decision. Let's remind you that the APC National Working Committee on Wednesday had announced the names of officers to fill vacant NWC and zonal positions of the party, to include Deputy National Publicity Secretary Duro Meseko from Kogi State and Zonal Organizing Secretary Ikani Shoaibu Okolo, also from Kogi State, which is where the concerns of the Kogi State APC chapter are coming from. Now, the crisis rocking the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, today took a new dimension as the party's National Working Committee suspended one of its founding members, Mr. Boniface Okechukwu Anyebonam, and the National Publicity Secretary, Agbo Major, for attempting to factionalize the party. The acting national chairman of the party, Abakauk Ali, and the national auditor, Oladipo Johnson, announced the development while addressing journalists in Abuja. And according to the NWC, the suspension of the duo was with immediate effect, pending the outcome of investigations by the party's disciplinary committee. Well, looks like it's a day of crisis for political parties. Anyways, it's time for your political roundup.
The National Assembly Election Tribunal, sitting in Jos, has affirmed the election of the People's Democratic Party candidate for the House of Representatives, Mr. Musa Aga, and Mr. Simon Huadkom, as authentic winners of the Plateau North senatorial election. In the two separate judgments in Jos, the state capital, the election of Musa Aga as member representing Jos North, Bassa Federal Constituency, was upheld following the inability of the petitioner Mohammed Buhari of the People's Redemption Party to prove his case on allegations of electoral misconduct concerning overvoting as well as nomination and sponsorship of the winner. In another judgment, the petition of Mr. Yangzi of the Labour Party against Simon Watcom of the People's Democratic Party for Plateau North Senatorial District was dismissed for lack of merit. In Lagos, the State House of Assembly has confirmed 22 out of the 39 nominees sent to the House by the State Governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, while rejecting the remaining 17 nominees. Among those not confirmed are former Commissioner for Information, Mr. Gbenga Omotosho, and former Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi. The Speaker of the House, Mr. Mudashiru Obasa, who presided over the day's sitting, said the confirmation followed rigorous and detailed screening of the nominees by an ad hoc committee led by the Chief Whip of the House, Honorable Fatai Mujid. Ahead of the governorship election in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa State, a group in the All Progressives Congress under the aegis of the Confederation of APC support groups is promising to embark on a massive grassroots campaign for the governorship candidates of the party across the three states. Speaking during a visit to the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Abdullahi Ganduje in Abuja, the Director General of the group assures the party chairman of their support in repositioning the party while appealing to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to open its platform for voters to move their polling units to their respective places of residence.
We'll engage deeply and streamline templates for the success of our party in not too distant forthcoming gubernatorial and National Assembly by-elections in Kogi.
Meanwhile, some APC youth are asking President Bola Tinubu to appoint a young person as Minister for Youth Development. Addressing journalists during the protest at the National Secretariat of the party in Abuja, the leader of the APC Young Stakeholders Forum, Ecological notes that it is important for the president to appoint someone below the age of 50 as Minister for Youth Development.
Welcome back to Politics Today. As I said earlier, it's a day of internal crisis for political parties, and the Labour Party is not left out. Today, there were reports of a court judgment affirming Mr. Lamidi Apapa as the authentic chairman of the Labour Party. Well, that judgment has generated quite some reactions, with some questioning if it did indeed exist. So let's talk about the crisis within the Labour Party, which has resurfaced again. I'm joined by the National Legal Advisor of the Labour Party, and who is also the lawyer to the Abure-led Labour Party, Mr. Kehinde Edu. Welcome to Politics Today.
Thank you very much.
I'm also joined by Monday Mawa. He's a lawyer to the Apapa-led Labour Party and the Deputy National Secretary of the party. Welcome to Politics Today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's get one thing out the way. Reports today said Imo State Court of Appeal made a judgment affirming Lamidi Apapa as the authentic national chairman of the party and voided anything conducted outside him. Let's understand whether this judgment did exist, because there are reactions as to whether or not it does exist, I beg your pardon. So let's understand whether it does exist, because there are concerns as to whether or not that judgment really held and what the details of the judgment are. Let me start with Mr. Kehinde Edu.
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying nothing like that happened. And I had expected that before such reports were either made, either written about or spoken about in any media organization, there should have been efforts to confirm, either to wait for your reporters who attended the court or to see the judgment. Now, the judgment is not out yet, but those who went to court, even looking at the parties to the action in court, will have known that nothing like that will have ever been said by the court. In the first place, no court can give an order against a party that is not before it. Nobody that is not before the court can benefit from a judgment of a court or can suffer anything from a judgment of a court. Simply put, the appeal is heard today, or decided today, arose from the Federal High Court Owerri judgment. Now, that Federal High Court, in that judgment, the parties to that suit were Basil Maduka, who was the plaintiff, and then we have, as defendants, we have INEC, we have Labour Party, and then we have Ukaibo, Ikechukwu. Now, you could see that from the parties to that judgment, Abure was not before the court, Apapa was not before that court. None of the candidates, of our candidates from either Imo, Kogi, or Bayelsa was before the court. How could the court have gone ahead to give any decision?
Were you a party to the suit?
I was not a party to the suit.
Was any member of your faction a party to the suit?
No, just Labour Party. Just Labour Party was a party to the suit, and you have two people who lost at the primaries of the Labour Party, Sir Basil Maduka and Ikechukwu. Well, so and what the court decided was that the plaintiff in that matter, who was Sir Basil Maduka, did not have local standi to institute that action. So the court dismissed the suit without giving any other decision was taken.
When was this
court.
Dismissal?
Because the suit was dismissed sometimes, I think over 2 months ago. I think it was on the 28th of, I think, May, that decision was given. So the court merely, the 28th of June, so the court merely dismissed dismissed that case and did not give any further orders. Now, the two appeals decided today arose from that judgment. And Sir Basil Maduka appealed to the Court of Appeal and said that the court was wrong to have dismissed his suit. And the court said, well, the court was right that you don't have local standard. That is one decision. The second decision was the decision by Labour Party, who said that the decision by that Federal High Court to dismiss Maduka's suit and was right in law, but the court will have actually struck out that matter and not make further statements. But the court went ahead to make some statements obiter. Obiter statements are statements that are not the ratio of the decision, that were not part of that decision. But the court was just on the front leg of his own. He made some statements obiter. And those were not part of it. So today, the Police Court said that the court should not have gone ahead to make those statements. So what the Court of Appeal decided today was that those obiter statements are not the decision. And those obiter statements could not have affected anybody. And there was no reason to have appealed those obiter. That the only decision that that court reached was that Sir Basil Maduka did not have local standard. So I think this statement that there is any decision of family liability was unfortunate for anybody to have made such statements without looking at the parties to that suit, without hearing from your reporters from who went to that court, or without seeing the judgment. Anybody who sees that judgment from the parties to the suit will have known that nothing like that could have existed.
Very well. He said a lot of things. I've seen you shake your head a number of times.
Yes.
And I wonder which of them you disagree with.
Okay. Well, you've asked about the judgment, whether it exists
or not.
And I think first I expected him to tell you whether there was a judgment today. But I think in the course of his statement, he made an allusion to that there was a judgment. I think to answer that question categorically, there was a judgment of the Court of Appeal, Owerri Division, sitting in Abuja today. So your reporter never gave a wrong report that there was a judgment. Now, it will be important to also look at what led to that judgment. Sometime before, I will take us a little bit so that those that have not been following the crisis can understand where we are coming from. On the 5th of April, 2023, an FCT High Court sitting in Abuja here granted the restraining order, restraining Julius Aburi, the National Secretary, former National Secretary, and 2 other principal officers of the party from parading themselves as national officers of the party pending the determination of the suit before the court. Meanwhile, before that time, there was a schedule for primaries for Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa, which was stated for 15th of April. Now, as a result of the restraining order against Aburi, of course, by virtue of Section 14, Sub 2B of the Labour Party Constitution, that says that in the absence of the national chairman, the deputy takes over. The then deputy national chairman of the party, person of Alhaji Lamidi Apapa, took over in acting capacity. And they wrote another letter to INEC, changing the initial date of 15 to 16 of April. That, in other words, the primary that was supposed to hold on this 15 before that, they have now decided to change it to 16. That letter was communicated to INEC, and then the day for the primary came, and of course, the man restrained by a court order, because the law is that once you will be restrained, the implication is that you stay in abeyance, pending you, either that restraining order is set aside by a higher court or discharged by the same court that made the order. So why that order was still succeeding? Mr. Julius Aburi and the other group went ahead, conducted a screening on the 11th of April for those candidates that were to participate in the primaries. Then on the 15th, contrary to the earlier letter that came from Apapa, changing the date of the primary from 15 to 16, he still went ahead in disobedience of that court order and held a purported primary, which allegedly produced one Mr. Aton now for Imo and some other, the Bayelsa and Kogi State. Now, Apapa, having changed the date of the primary by a letter to INEC, went ahead and conducted his own primary on the 16th of April. Now, one of the aspirants who participated in the primary on the 15th, dissatisfied by what transpired, approached the Owerri Federal High Court to say, well, court, I'm the authentic candidate. Declare me the winner. And in that suit, he added Labour Party. That is the party upon which all of us we are members. Added Labour Party, if Labour Party is part of it, everybody, we are deemed to be part of it. Now, added Labour Party as one of the defendants, then I think the candidate that emerged from Apapa's group, Chief Ikeagu, we call him Ikenga, he added him also as another, I think the second defendant. Now, the court, after going through the entire suit, came to a finding that, yes, from what has happened, that is the only primary that took place on the 16/16. I want this point to be clearly made. There's only primary that took place on the 16 that is valid.
That's the judgment today.
No, I'm talking about judgment of the FCT, Federal High Court sitting in Owerri, which was what the court now affirmed today.
Okay.
So I'm only trying to give us a background information of what brought us where we are. So the Federal High Court sitting in Owerri said, well, in view of the facts before me, there is an evidence before me that on the 5th of April, Julius Abure and 3 others were restrained. And that in what capacity did they now conduct their primaries, which took place on the 16th, on the 15th. And that there is also an evidence before me that the primary earlier schedule for 15/15 had been changed to 16/16. And the court held that it is only primary that took place on the 16th that is valid. And that any candidate that emerged from that of the 16th that are deemed to be valid candidate for the party. That is not all. So, after that judgment, they were dissatisfied with the judgment. They approached Court of Appeal. The candidate that purportedly emerged from Abure's group, Mr. Aton, applied to the court on the 28th of last month to be made an interested party in that suit. Unfortunately, being a pre-election matter, by virtue of Section 285, you can only apply within 14 days. Section 285, sub 10. You can only apply within 14 days. Now, they came to court on the 16th. That is 16 days after the judgment of the Federal High Court. And the Court of Appeal said, no, your suit can no longer come, it has become statute barred. In addition,
we'll come back to you. We'll come back to you.
In addition to that, because said, well, this order you are trying to appeal, you ought to have sought leave from the lower court before approaching us. And on that ground, the court sought out his application to join as an interested party before the Court of Appeal. So I wonder why he's saying there's not anything. Now let me conclude that. So at the end of the day, they appealed to Court of Appeal, and Court of Appeal today, in a unanimous judgment, upheld the judgment of the Federal High Court sitting in Owerri that had earlier upheld the primary conducted by Papa 1, and then also upheld the candidate that emerged from that primary that held on the 16th, and that any other primary that took place on the 15th, the court declared them invalid.
What Mr. Edun had said initially was that the defendants were not present in court.
They applied to be joined as a party.
They were not even party to this.
They were not party to that suit. Please, let me say something.
Tell me that.
Let's hear
Let me answer that question.
Okay, let him clarify this particular question.
Who is a defendant like he's trying to talk about? He's talking about Aton, probably. Aton applied to be joined as an interested party. So I'm sorry. To be joined as an interested party in the suit. And the Court of Appeal, in its infinite wisdom, said, you have come here late. You ought to have come within 14 days. Sir, I didn't interrupt now. I'm sorry,
no,
sir.
You're taking quite a lot of time.
Yes, okay. Just because the point is, I want the viewer to understand the gamut of this case.
So beyond Athana Chonu, I believe that's whom you're referring to.
Yes,
who was refused from being part of the suit.
Yes.
Which other person was a part
No
of
other person applied to be joined.
Okay,
The Labour Party was the party in the suit.
Let's hear from it and Edun.
Now, yes, the truth is that if there is an order from the Federal High Court of Owerri, why have they not enrolled that order? Let me tell you, the only thing the Federal High Court of Owerri decided, which was the ratio of that decision, was that the person that came to court did not have local standard. That is Basil Maduka. And when the court
was that the judgment?
Yes, the court says it has no jurisdiction. Yes, the court in that way said it has no jurisdiction to hear this matter because the plaintiff in this matter has no local standard to approach this court. So the court did not make sense, and the court went further to say that it did not have the competence to comment about the interim order of the High Court of the FCT restraining Julius Abure. That did not have the competence because that restraining order is before that matter is a matter on appeal before the Court of Appeal Abuja. And the court said that it will amount to impertinence, insubordination, and judicial rascality for that court to go ahead to be making statements that are prejudicial.
So what did the Court of Appeal sit on today? Just a second. Now, what did the Court of Appeal sit on today?
The Court of Appeal sit on 2 appeals. One, Maduka appealed that judgment, saying he has no local standard. Maduka appealed. Then the Labour Party appealed against the bitter statements made by that court. But today, the Court of Appeal decided that there was no reason for the Labour Party to have even appealed that judgment in the first place, because there was no decision of that court, other than that court does not have jurisdiction. And the court clearly said that it has no jurisdiction. So when we are saying that a court has said something, now, when a court makes a pronouncement and there is a positive order of that court, then the court will now give a judgment order, which can be enrolled and be enforced. If that judgment that they said it was in their favor in Bayelsa, in the Federal High Court of Owerri, sitting in Bayelsa, why have they not enrolled that order and served that order in INEC? The truth is that there was no enrolled order that confirming anybody. The truth is that today, the candidate of Labour Party for the 2023 governorship election is Atan Ashonu Ineji, whose name has been published by INEC as the candidate, the finalist of candidates. And before you can validly challenge that as an aspirant, then you have to make it a respondent. It is clear by the law, by Rule 3 of the practice direction.
Mr. Edun, you were not in court today, were you?
Yes, I was not in court, but my law firm was in court. Our lawyers were in court. I'm part of that suit.
So it's the update from your lawyers who were in court?
Yes, my lawyers were in court today.
Were you in court today?
Yes. The point is this. Whether he was in court or not, I think there is a point we are trying to cover up here. And that point is simple. Did Aton apply to be joined in the suit? Yes or no, sir? I'm sorry.
Now.
I'm sorry.
Gentlemen, just a second. So the first thing I'm trying to establish, because it's a confusion out there, is whether or not there is a court judgment affirming Lamidi Apapa.
There is nothing like that. Now, Apapa was done before the court. How could the court have made any statement affirming him?
Let me clarify.
Today, now, the CTC of that judgment will be available anytime from tomorrow. You will see that even looking at the parties at all, you will not see Akwapa's name there.
Okay.
You will not see Abure's name.
Let's get this.
Why will the court have made any
clarify something? Yeah. Yes, I'm speaking as a lawyer. Now, the judgment today affirmed the judgment of the Federal High Court Owerri sitting in Bayelsa.
What was that judgment? Because he said that judgment dismissed
simply that is the simple thing. That's the only decision.
I'm going there.
That is the only decision of that court.
That was not the only decision.
That was the only decision.
Now I'm coming now. They were
finding. You have the judgment from that.
I was thinking that the judgment would be here. The court made a profound finding in that judgment, and one was that in what capacity did Abure conducted his primary in view of the restraining order of the FCT High Court?
Those were mere or bitter statements.
So I'm coming now. So that we can hear, people can hear. Now the court finding in that was that from the evidence before him, there were two major findings by that court. One, that in what capacity was Abure acting as at on the 15th when he went ahead to conduct the primary in Imo State? That because from the evidence before him, there was an order, a restraining order from a competent court of record, FCT High Court, restraining him and 3 others from carrying out their function as a national officer of the party, which orders he subsists you today, my brother. That was one. 2, another order the court made was there are 2 primary before the court, one on the 15th and one on the 16th. And the court heard that the primary conducted on the 16th by the acting national chairman, Alhaji Lamidi Apapa, is the valid primary. Those were the findings of the... maybe I can pay for another date. Maybe tomorrow we'll bring the judgment here, myself and him, or any other person. Let's read it to the world. And the court said, if the Abure was restrained... I'm sorry, sir. If Abure had been restrained, he could not have gone ahead. In what capacity was he conducting? Did he conduct the primary upon the 15th? And the court nullified primary upon the 15th and upheld primary for 16. Then the question then is, who conducted primary on the 15th.
Okay, let's hear from him, because his position is that April 15 judgment restraining Mr. Aburi.
April 5th.
April 5th, I beg your pardon, restraining Mr. Julius Aburi and the other officers from parading themselves was disobeyed.
Yes, that was depending on the court.
That judgment has been appealed against. Is the subject of appeal before the Court of Appeal Abuja. And that court in Bayelsa, that starts in Bayelsa, the Federal Court of Owerri, said that it does not have the capacity, it does not have the power to comment about that thing because it's the subject of appeal. And the court said that those are the exact words the court used, that it will amount to judicial rascality, impertinence, and insubordination if he goes ahead to make any comment about any purported
let me ask
suspension.
you, the court made a finding between primary of 15 and 16, sir. Let us be honest to the world. Did the court make finding as to primary of 15 and 16?
That was not a decision of the court.
Aha.
The decision of the court that it has no jurisdiction to hear the matter and dismiss it. When the court dismisses a matter, that is the end of it. Whatever the court goes ahead to say, they are mere bitter statements. The court was merely mere side comments. Now,
I want us to understand something now. There are two courts now, the appeal courts, both of competent jurisdiction. The one in Edo State and the one that
I will explain that quickly for you.
The one that Mr. Monday is talking about now.
Yes.
Which of these orders should we be holding on to?
Now, let me explain that to you quickly, because I was part of the case.
Okay, he was part of it, so let's quickly hear him. But you have to be as quick as possible.
I'm sorry. That of Bini was merely on the suspension of Julius Aburi, only by his words. His words on the 31st of March this year, came together and looked at some of the things, some of the infraction, and suspended him as a member of the ward. Or that was on the 31st of March. Now, this suspended him as member of the ward. Then he ran to court to say, no, that he can only be removed as a national officer by a convention called for that purpose. Okay. And the court agreed with him. Dissatisfied with that judgment, we approached Court of Appeal sitting in Benin. And the Court of Appeal sitting in Benin looked at the totality of the case and said, well, from my finding, we have the view that the judgment of the lower court is correct, that the ward ought not to have suspended him. That is the judgment of Benin. Unfortunately, the case of Aburi is like a man having 3 water to cross.
We need to quickly go to
Now, 3 water to cross is a pond, a stream, and an ocean. And then the man succeeded in crossing the pond. He has not crossed water yet.
Okay, let's hear from
the truth about the whole matter is that judgment of the Court of Appeal, Edo, which affirmed the judgment of the High Court of Edo State, which says that no ward executive committee can suspend Aburi, has actually knocked the bottom out of the whole rascality of this Akwakwa group. The truth is that it was that notice of suspension that they took to the High Court of the FCT.
No.
Wait, let me finish.
I'm sorry, sir. It was not only that.
Let me finish.
They were issue of infraction from the police report.
Let me finish.
Let him finish.
They took that notice of suspension, which was null and void of no effect in the first place, and took it from Edo, which has territorial jurisdiction. There's something they call territorial jurisdiction. If something, the High Court of the FCT, if by just that name alone, says High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, not High Court of this suspension, they said it from his word in Arue, Uromi, Edo State. How will the High Court of the FCT exercise jurisdiction over something that happened in Arue, Uromi, Edo State, when the High Court of Edo State was there? But they misled that court, took that notice of suspension to the High Court of the FCT, and also made some criminal allegations in an originating summons. You see, it is so funny that court was misled. But a judge is human too. There could be some errors. So a judge is human. They took that notice of suspension from Edo State to the High Court of the FCT and also made some criminal allegations about some police reports, which are the internal affairs of the police. If the police has a case against the police, they should go to court. They said the police has some report of this, and they misled that court into giving that interim order. We felt that court did not have jurisdiction over that suit, because in the first place, you cannot be making criminal allegations and originating summons. 2, you cannot be talking about suspension of somebody from his ward in Edo in the High Court of the FCT. That was why we challenged that interim order, and that suit is before the Court of Appeal Abuja, and that was why that court in the Federal High Court of Owerri, sitting in Bayelsa, said that he did not have the competence
You know what,
to comment about any interim order of suspension.
For this
because the truth is that the matter is before the Court of Appeal Abuja, and it will amount to rascality, impertinence, and insubordination on the part of that court. So the only order that has been made, whether neither the Federal High Court Owerri and neither the Court of Owerri sitting in Abuja made any other order apart from the order deciding that Basim Bafika lacks jurisdiction. No other order has been made.
Well,
if there's any other order made, let them enroll that order.
Very well then.
If you need
This particular segment is practically over, but I'll allow if that is that your final statement.
Yes, of course.
That's your no order apart from the order declaring that Maduka lacks local standard and has no jurisdiction to approach the court in the first place. No other order was made. Neither the Federal High Court Owerri and neither the Court of Appeal Abuja made any order against
Mr. Monday's final statement in 30 seconds, please.
No, in my final statement, the only thing I can say today is to congratulate the Alhaji Lamidi-led fashion for this well-deserved judgment today, the judgment which has now affirmed the decision of the Federal High Court Owerri sitting in Bayelsa that has heard that it is the primary on the 16th that is the only valid primary.
So, like you said, we expect the judgment to be out tomorrow.
Yes.
And then we will have the soft copy of it very well.
Thank you.
The press goofed by saying that.
We will know by tomorrow. I'd like to thank both of you for coming. Mr. Kende Edun, the lawyer to the Aburi-led Labour Party. Thank you very much. And also Mr. Monday Mawa, lawyer to the Apapa-led Labour Party. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tomorrow we'll have more details. And that's, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the Ecological Fund. So much missing from that. More details. Please stay with us.
Okay.
Welcome back to Politics Today. Now I need your undivided attention. We're talking money now. 177 billion naira has been questioned by the Public Complaints Commission, and that's why it has set up a panel to investigate what states have done with 177 billion naira ecological fund from January to, I think, September 2022. That's a lot of money, and considering the state of the country with regards to flooding and erosion and the devastations that follow, it is enough to ask questions. But interestingly, the report says that 27 states shunned the invitation of the panel that's carrying out this investigation. Now, this investigation held between the 31st of July and the 16th of August. Yet 27 states failed to honor it. So let's have a conversation now. I'm joined by the Commissioner, Federal Complaints Commission, who is also a part of the team that's carrying out this investigation, Kayode Bamishile. Welcome to Politics Today.
Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you for having me.
It's alarming, and I think it's interesting that this investigation has been carried out. But let's start the conversation like this. What exactly is the PCC investigating, and why is it important to investigate these monies?
All right, Terry, thank you. So why is PCC investigating this case? So the Public Complaints Commission is saddled with the responsibility to look into administrative injustice within the ministry, department, and agencies of government, both at federal and state level, right? And also public companies registered within the CAMA institution of the country. Now, the reason why we have taken on this case or this investigation is simply because we've received several complaints from indigents, which dates back to last year when we had a conference, and the question regarding ecological funds was raised that, we hear the federal government gives certain amount of money to states every month, and why is that, are those funds not being used? They can't see the effects because you see flooding, you see erosion, you've got devastation, deforestation, and you've got all of these things going on within the states and local governments. So the Honorable Chief Commissioner of the Commission, Honorable Abimbola Yusuf, took it upon himself to then write to the Ecological Project Office last year, November, and then said, you know what, you guys need to come in and give us some form of clarification or explanation regarding to these issues. And it was at that meeting we found out or realized that a certain amount of money every month goes to the state account, a dedicated account for the state, and a certain amount, which is 0.6% of the 2.32% that comes from federation account on ecological funds, goes into the local government account as well. Now, these funds are meant to be used by both states and the local government chairman across the 774 local governments in Nigeria to deal with ecological issues.
But are there any reasons given, before we go into the details of your report, are there any reasons given by the states that failed to show up? Because 27 is a huge number.
Well, let me put it this way. One out of those 22 out of the 27, one did send an apology and ask for a new date to come in and present their accounts and present to us projects that they've done. And the commission gracefully granted that. The other one, which is Borno, so the states, which is Castina, that requested for a shift, and that has been granted. However, Borno had submitted a detailed report through the Honorable Commissioner, Public Complaints for Borno State. So they've submitted a detailed report, and we were looking at that already. Yeah, but yeah, go on.
Now, one of the portions of that report shows that the stakeholders were not operating on the same page.
Well, again, that is it. So some of the states, 8 states that came in, one of the things that we found out was the fact that the sum that went into the state account, because they came in with their bank statements. I mean, I must applaud the states that came in. That showed some level of accountability and transparency. Now, they came in with their statements of account, and we realized that some of the funds that came in did not tally with the accounts that had been submitted to us by the Accountant General's Office of the Federation for the period of investigation as well.
So now we have to pay attention to just the 8 states that showed up.
No, absolutely not.
Did you have findings beyond the 8 states that presented papers?
So like we said to you before we went into this investigation and when we called in the people, again, let me state this here clearly, and I think for the benefit of states that have not shown up, it is not a witch hunt exercise. It is a case review. It is a fact-finding process. All we just need to know is, yes, you got these funds. Yes, these funds were used for this project. You might be surprised that at the end of this entire investigation, that we may be making recommendations through the National Assembly to the federal government that more attention needs to be given to funds given to the states to deal with this issue. But again, if they haven't come in, there's absolutely no way we can tell if these funds were used or were not used. So for the 8 states that have come up, what will happen afterwards is that we will then start an on-the-spot investigation by our offices, by the honorable commissioners in those states, to go on and find out if those projects were truly done. And then the people, which is the main issue here, are then more informed and aware that, yes, those funds are being used. Maybe they're just not enough to cater for the problems and the issues of ecology that they're facing.
Okay, so with reports of 1.4 million people displaced in 2022 alone due to flooding.
Yes.
And then you recall that last year, I think the special advisor on media to the president, Garba Shehu, at the time said that states should be held accountable for whatever devastations that they are unable to account for because they get these ecological funds. I asked if we could restrict our conversation to the 8 states because investigation had not been concluded on the others.
Absolutely.
So now, your findings from the 8 states, what is the level of implementation of these funds?
From some of the
Perhaps
states,
you could mention the 8 states that came forward.
Well, so we had Jigawa, we had Taraba, we had Kaduna, we had Ondo, we had Ogun State, we had Yobe, and I think Taraba, and then Rivers. 8 of them came. And like I said to you, they did come with state accounts. Now, for some of them, they also did not come with their local government account. So we are still investigating. We're still looking at the funds that have gone to them and the projects that they've done with them. And like I said to you, we must applaud their level of accountability and transparency, because they only did not come with projects that they've done. They actually came, some with reports, bounded reports, with pictorial evidence of projects that they've done as well.
Well, what are your concerns with regards to the implementation or utilization of the funds?
My concerns are, and one, and I think this is where Nigerian citizens also need to get involved, because I feel, and I speak personally now, that the federal government, by constitution, have no right to all those funds. So they carry out their constitutional rights, releasing those funds to states and also local governments. Now, each local government, it will surprise you, minimum, if you brought 3 million into a local government monthly, you will find a major effect. There are several things that they can do with those funds within the local government. But when those funds do not get to the local government or is not being used, then we have a problem. Then the citizens should then begin to question and ask. And that's where citizens' role come in. That these funds actually should be used in your local government. If a local government gets up to 10 million a month, they should be able to point to projects and things that they've done.
From your findings, I'd like to know, did you find that the funds as utilized by these states were sufficient?
In some cases, if I would say, I think Taraba, right? The funds and the sort of issues that they're dealing with there, right? Again, we only had access to the state account. The sort of issues that they're dealing with in Taraba will require more funds. In Ondo, in some states. So the point is, until we are able to look holistically, some of the states have also said that they will forward their local government accounts to the Public Complaints Commission's office in their states for further review. And until we find that, look at that we can.
At what pace were these funds being utilized?
At what pace?
At what pace?
Well, again, this is where we hold government accountable as well, which is the Accountant General's office. Those funds are not even released as regularly as they should.
How regularly should they be released?
Every month, because those funds are released every month.
So you found that not every month that these funds are released?
No, maybe not the full percentage. So they pay maybe 50% and then release some. Again, maybe because of scarcity of funds or paucity of funds. Reasons like that could be the reasons why they don't release.
And in your findings, in what areas were these funds being utilized?
Yeah, drainage, erosion issues, flooding issues.
Were they preventive measures or proactive?
We can't, again, until we carry out the on-the-spot report investigation to ascertain at what point those funds were released. All we got were pictorial evidence of what those funds
you know why this is being called to question is that proactive measures and reactive measures are entirely different things.
Absolutely.
And if the funds are not released promptly, the state government can only act reactively.
You're right.
So what, in your finding, did you find that these funds could affect perhaps the response time of these state governors and perhaps the implementation?
I don't think, because this is what you get monthly. So there should, again, because it is inconclusive yet, because if you have issues, take for example, issues of flooding, where a local government or a town is being completely wiped out, right? It will take a bit of time to address that particular issue. So if the funds, which I think what you're saying, if the funds are released as and when due,
absolutely,
right, these issues will be dealt with accordingly as well. Now, the state ecological funds released to the states are meant to also support what is being given to local governments as well.
You know, many look to the federal government to respond to just about everything that happens in state. And I also recall that state governors also appeal to the federal government, despite the fact that they get 2.32% of.
No, not all. No.
Not all.
Let me correct that.
Okay.
So 2.32%, 1% of that sum, of that percentage, goes to the ecological office, NEMA, Northeast Wall. I think about 5 different agencies there, and then 0.72% of that sum goes to states, and then 0.6% goes to local government.
So would it be out of place for the federal government to still look to the state government, I beg your pardon, to still look to the federal government, considering that 4 agencies take about 45% of whatever?
Yeah, I think so. I think so because see, the reason why this issue should not be overlooked, and the reason why state governments should take this matter seriously, is that we're dealing with a world issue here. Climate change is a major issue. It's a major issue. I mean, last week, if you saw in the news in Frankfurt, the entire airport was flooded with water. So these are major issues. I mean, we should be thankful to God that we're not having issues of, wildfire issues here as well.
Now, so let's talk about perhaps international support, because
Yes.
I know that international donor agencies give funding to
Yes.
State governments as well. I don't know if in the course of your investigation you came across some funding for state governments with regard to this climate change.
Those are proactive measures from states as well, because in certain states, particularly in somewhere an area like Ondo, where they did mention that the impact of the reclamation done in Lagos along the coastal axis of Lagos affected a particular community, I think Ayetoro in Ondo. Now, they've had to look for international funding to help support those major issues affecting that particular community. So yes, they do. Some of those states have sought for international funding, and I'm sure they do get them, but I don't think our
your mandate covers that.
No, it doesn't.
But why have you chosen to go from January to September, I believe, 2022?
Well, it started last year, and the mandate actually gives us 2 years to review cases. So we've just stayed within the mandate of the commission. So cases outside of 2 years and above, we can't.
I'd like to get your advice for both the federal and the state governments, because from our conversation, one thing you've said is that the release time for the funds, not clear, sort of affects how the state governments implement these funds. It doesn't take away the fact that the government should account for these monies as they come. But if the release time is a problem, and then I asked if you believe that based on the funds available to the state governments, especially because of the 8 states that you dealt with, if you believed that that funding was enough. So if marry those two things together, and how would you advise the federal and state governments to go about funds and perhaps transparency and accountability in this regard?
Well, like I said, on this particular issue, kudos to the federal government. Certain funds are being released. Now, the judicial
just not timely.
Well, again...
But you agree with me that the timing affects implementation.
I totally agree with you. Right. I totally agree with you. But it has been released, right? Now, it is the administrative use. It is the use of those funds that we are particular about. Now, my advice to state government and local government is to ensure that as much as possible, they're transparent, right, with their dealings. Because a section of the Constitution says that the welfare and the security, right, is the primary purpose
of government.
Of government.
Quickly now, So the 27 states that did not appear.
Yes.
Is your investigation over, and what happens to those
No,
states?
no, it's not over. So we are going to write a reminder to them. Again, I mean, for whatever reason, it could be that based on their busy schedule,
and they can be compelled to appear anyways.
Well, they can.
By what means?
Well, the commission has got powers to summon.
Okay.
And this will be the Commissioner of Finance and the Commissioner of
Very well
Environment.
then.
Yes.
I'd like to thank you very much,
Thank you.
Commissioner of Federal Complaints Commission. You're also heading this panel.
Ekiti State, you need to mention.
State, I mean, you're part of Kayode Bamishile. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Terry.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
And that's Politics Today. Very much, very big thank you to you as well for your time. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.